Okay, welcome everybody to the September 19th. I had to look at my watch. September 19th, 2023 Angels Camp City Council meeting. Roll call, please, Brooke.
Chair Herndon.
Present.
Vice Mayor Moncada.
Present.
Councilmember Broglio.
Present.
Councilmember Sherrod.
Present.
Staff is present.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3, closed session will be continued at the end of tonight's meeting, so there's nothing to report out at this time. Item 4, approval of the agenda as posted or amended. Anybody have any comments or questions or reasons to amend the agenda? Any members of the public?
I'll make a
Seeing
motion
none.
to approve the agenda.
Motion from Alvin
I'll second.
and Caroline as our second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Item 5 is public comment. The public may address the council on any item of public interest not otherwise on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of the city. No action may be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to city staff or placed on a subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Do we have any public comment tonight? Rose, do we have anyone that's joined us online tonight?
We do, but.
Any hands up if anyone needs to comment on public comment, please?
I didn't get that.
I watched once a time. I've got to turn that off.
No, looks like we're good.
Okay, seeing no public comment, we will be moving on to item 6, and that is our consent agenda. We have 3 items on consent. Any reason for anyone to pull any of these items? Okay, any public comment on any of these items? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion,
So moved.
and I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 7 is our regular agenda. We're going to start out with 7A, which is the Utica Park update. Amy Augustine.
Mayor and council members, a couple of revisions in your packet. There's a budget. We put an updated budget in there, which is up on the screen, and there's some handouts here for the public if they'd like it. It's only different in that we added the cost of doing vegetation removal to date into there, the 75. Can't see that from here. And that portion of Hoyer's invoices that we've received to date, which is like 22. So
Can we get a copy of what you're talking about?
yeah,
If that can come our way, that'd be great.
And we added this to our project website for Utica Park, so you'll see the updated budget and schedule.
Thank you.
so basically funds spent to date, 455,489 out of a total budget of 3,970,000 plus or minus round numbers. I did also want to spend a tiny bit of time on the timeline. I thought it was a little more difficult to see in several pages than on one page. That very, very, very long line you see, that's the grant term. That's how long we have to get everything constructed. In a nutshell, what this timeline tells you is that a year from Thanksgiving, we should have a park open and operating. And that the red area up there, that's our geotechnical report. As of last Friday, we believe we have a plan and a geotechnical firm on board to start work in October. So, and it's a very reasonable approach that they will be taking. They're going to examine historical maps in greater detail, refine that map that Condor had provided before. And should there be any areas where there's an overlap between a geotechnical issue that might be a concern and a structure, then we'll do some testing. But The idea is to keep costs in check by doing a little closer examination. And we found some excellent maps for them, some old photos that showed where building used to be. Anyone in the public, online, council members, staff who know of any good maps of the old Lightner Mine, please get them to us at the city. It will be a huge help. And then lastly, included in your packet is the stakeholder design committee. The people on here, it's a very informal committee. It was designed to reflect basically the people who participated in the outreach that came up with a conceptual plan to begin with. And the relative number of those people that have been involved. Red Heart High School was highly involved. We contacted their leadership class, and their leadership students are basically, they do outreach to other students and bring that research back and give us input. So we have access to like 450 students by going through the leadership class to get some input on designs. We did add a property owner who is no longer pending in the health status has said she would like to serve. Some members of the business community, Sierra Hope, because we did outreach there to people who use the food pantry, people who are in transitional housing to have a broad spectrum. Foothill Village Senior, because of course we're trying to make this as accessible as possible to seniors. And the whole idea here is to get a broad view on the design of specifics. October, we're going to kick off the meetings starting on Wednesdays or Fridays at lunchtime. And our first business will be the playground design. And by that, I mean, what's exactly going to go on the playground, picking out equipment and that type of stuff, and surfacing and those types of things. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, who's that?
I'm good.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on expenses. Rebecca, we entered into a contract for the tree removal for the 170, and that's not on there.
Well, 75 has been spent today.
They've only billed
Haven't
us
been invoiced.
75.
Shouldn't it be, I mean, we haven't spent 2 million for the design and construction either, and it's on here, so shouldn't that be on here?
That was the revised budget item that you got. And it has a line right there that says down here, 75,000.
7502, okay. What about on our consent agenda, we just adopted, there was a line item for Pfeffer's tree removal, Utica Park tree trimming and removal for 8,700.
That probably should be incorporated in here because that was it Pepper who did the tree trimming, yeah. So we'll need to add that.
Okay.
That was the second part of the arborist report was of the healthy trees that are there to have them run.
Cool. Do we think we forgot anything else?
Well, Amy did bring up there is one burnt tree that we might need to.
The one behind the kitchen?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a birch.
That has to come down.
Some of this expenditure, like the one with the pepper, would that be categorized under just general park expenses, or would it have to be under this 3.9 million?
It would be part of this project.
Okay.
Is there any way in terms of actuals to then give a description as to what that actual was? Because, so if you're just looking at the San Joaquin County Office of Education Greater Valley Conservation Center and you haven't been paying any attention to our meetings, you might not know what that is. So is there somewhere that we can actually say, so I know it says budgeted expenditures, but can we then break it into actuals and what that expense was?
Vegetation removal? You want us to add like
Yes.
vegetation removal? Would that clarify that?
I'm sorry, it's a little hard to hear.
You know what, I don't think that mic, I did have someone tell me, Sam, that they can't hear. Is there a way to turn that on? I don't know that
I don't think it's on.
yeah, sorry, hold on, Isabel, we're
We
gonna,
might have to be technical.
Sam to the rescue.
Yeah.
You realize this is Angel Camp City Council equipment.
Hey,
We're not
hey,
qualified.
If I break it.
you're our, sound guy. Okay,
Hello, hello?
No.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Wait.
now you have to sing the national anthem.
Council member Moncada, I was asking if under San Joaquin County Office of Education, if we put parentheses vegetation removal, is that what you're, the type of thing you're looking for?
Yeah, I think that would be great, because I think, from comments I've received, people walked away assuming that because people had received credit for cutting down those trees, that they then assumed that it was implied, it seemed to be a little implied that we didn't pay anything for that. And so I just want to be very specific
Okay.
when we're line iteming these items out.
Okay. We can do that.
Because I just, as we said, I think transparency is key right now and most important. I also wanted to ask, I think it's great that we have students on the stakeholder committee. Seeing as there's 3, and I know they have access to 400 students, but a lot of times, as we know, students, they fly the nest. And so I really feel it's important for us to have the buy-in from the property owners who live along, right across the street from the park. And so I just want to be sure that we did reach out to all of the property owners, and that if there was more than one who wanted to have the opportunity to be on that committee, for them to have that opportunity.
No, we did not reach out to all of them.
Okay, so I would like to see that happen. I feel like at the last meeting, we kind of discussed that, of reaching out to them, because we did drop the ball in the past. And then the other thing is, do we have, I'm not familiar with all the names on that list, but do we have anyone that has accessibility needs? Because I would also like to see their opinions or their views or their needs incorporated in that stakeholder committee as well. And I don't know, I feel like that really generalizes it down, right? But
I believe Rebecca had the name of a lady who we did intend to include on this, who I will add, who can address that, as well as our representative from the senior living community, so we can add that. Yep.
okay. Obviously, I think that's super important, so we don't want to exclude anyone. Or exclude, excuse me. Well, that's all I have for right now.
And I want to add that these will be open to the public,
Yeah.
these meetings, so.
Right. Just a little clarity on that, the homeowners on that street, are we asking the homeowner, not the person who's renting from them? And I don't know who's renting and who's homeowning, but I just feel like the buy-in should be from the homeowner versus the person who's renting.
So we went to the property owners listed,
Okay.
property owner
Yeah.
listed.
Yeah.
So I talked to 2 on either end
Okay.
and asked for input. And I made the choice based upon having worked with.
I think it's sufficient, honestly, because, I mean, that's, how many people live on that street? 5?
Well, there's 4 houses representing
Yeah.
3 families.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, I don't know that we need to reach out to have every
That
single
one's
homeowner on that
intense.
street, on this committee, that's kind of heavy.
So I don't think that we should have every homeowner on this committee. I think that would be overkill, but I absolutely think it was displayed at our last meeting that we missed the mark on outreach. And there's some distension. So I absolutely think that we should reach out to each and all homeowners within the area. And I don't think it would hurt to at least invite them. If some are gonna be, part of the committee, that would be great, but at least let them be heard. I absolutely think it's important, and they might not be able to make the lunchtime on Wednesdays or Fridays, but I think if we don't do that, we're just repeating bad habits.
our intention was to notify them of all of the design
Correct.
meetings.
Right.
And have one of them on the committee.
Right.
So if you could clarify to me how you.
I think, because we're talking about 2 different things.
You're talking about the
We're talking about
committee
talking
that
about the
gets
committee
it
that-
designed together.
the committee, I think, can get too big,
Yeah.
and then you have too many
But
voices all
I
going at
think
once.
Isabel's point about 3 people from Bret Harte High School maybe is overkill. Those are 2 adolescent teenagers. I know them both, and they're not real outspoken kids. Then they don't even live in city limits. So I think we need to do more with property owners, and I absolutely think we need to involve, at least reach out and, kill them with kindness.
Yeah, and they're invited to come to the meetings,
Right,
right?
right, exactly. I just feel like we're in 2 different areas here. I just don't want to do, I want to make it manageable so that we can actually progress in this committee to get the work done that needs to get done. And I agree, like if you have too many people, you're going to have a hard time coming to consensus.
A consensus clarification from the council would be helpful to me.
Yeah.
As in,
I know. How many meetings are you thinking of having, Amy? Monthly?
we're gonna do 1 a month. If we need to have 2, because there's a deadline to meet for a particular design, we'll have 2. Again, it was supposed to be sort of informal. We call them when we need them. It's probably gonna take a couple to get the playground together. And by then, hopefully we'll have designs on the rest of it. The geotech will be done, and then we'll perhaps meet additional.
Yeah, I think reporting out from these meetings is essential to all the homeowners that you're talking about. And that's where we talked about making sure that we're not dropping the ball on communication.
For sure.
Yeah, so I think that's where there might be a little bit of confusion.
I still think we should invite them. I think that was loud and proud last meeting, and if they realize that we're moving forward without their input, and it will be another salt on an open wound, it won't be favorable. So I think we are at a disagreement on this. Isabel, do you want to speak to this anymore?
I do agree. I think that at this point, it's become pretty apparent that we've sort of failed, and I want to take this opportunity right now to correct it and make sure that we are doing what we're saying we're doing, because I think at this point we've lost the trust of the public, and that's extremely important to me. I take that responsibility seriously, and so I understand that, yeah, opening up a committee to everyone, but I just really want to make sure that we did. I think, Amy, you just said we did not reach out to all the property owners. And so I think it's important that we do, and perhaps if there's 6 of them, then the 6 of them can get together and nominate 2 people to be on the committee. It doesn't have to be all 6 of them, or they can alternate. But I really want to drive it home that we need to be transparent. We need to communicate with them, because I don't live across the street from the park, so it's not going to affect me as much as a person who does. And I just want to make sure that we include them as much as possible.
I like that idea of at least outreach and having them appoint 2, whereas we have 1 right now, correct? 1.
We'll have 1, and we would have all the others notified of each meeting.
Understand.
It's the
Correct.
current plan, but I am hearing from 2 of you that you want 2 on the committee and notify everyone. I'm hearing from some of you who want 1 on the committee and notify everyone. So I'm waiting for a consensus from you.
I don't care how many we get, but I would put a number on this committee, like 12 total. I mean,
There's 11
there's
here,
11
you're adding
plus
an ADA.
stealthy,
We're adding.
You're adding an ADA compliant individual.
which she's already in there, because you
She's in
said
there.
stealthy.
No, I did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then-
She's our.
So let's put a number on it, so we don't have all 4 that want to join, and then how far does it, my only concern is how far does it go then? My sister lives on the road above, and Hal Clements lives up on the hill above that. I mean, there's, I don't know, I think you're opening a can of worms on it. If they want to get together and nominate 1 person, fine, 2, fine, but I think you put a number, we already have 1.
We already appointed 1 from history, correct?
We've appointed 1
Right.
property owner, the one that's basically in the center of the park.
Yes.
To either side. So again, I will follow direction if we can get it.
I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open this to public, and I'm gonna see what the public has to say. They've heard our conversations, and then we'll bring it back and give you clearer direction on this.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll open this item for public hearing, or for public comment, I'm sorry. Members of the public, you are welcome to the podium and help us break our tiebreaker here. Gretel? She's gonna say it. You were able to attend our last meeting virtually, correct?
Yes.
So you know what we're speaking
Yes.
about with regard to her.
Yes. So I definitely do agree that they should be notified. If they don't participate, that's on them. I like the idea of picking two. I agree with Alvin that you shouldn't have 20 people on, but absolutely, I feel that if I lived across the park, from the park, and nobody contacted me, and then contacted two of my neighbors, I would be like, what am I, chopped liver? So I would say, I like the idea of them collaborating and coming up with, say, two spokespeople for their area, because it is a very specific kind of corner of town to live right there next to the park, but everything that happens at the park is directly gonna affect them. If it's the amphitheater, if it's the skate park, if it's the water slides or whatever it is you're putting in, every single thing is going to affect their way of life. And so I mean, if I lived there, I would probably be at every meeting, but it's their prerogative.
Can't think of any other public comment on the park.
We do have one online.
With a hand raised?
Yes. Justin,
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself if you could, Justin?
Hi, my name's Justin Trudeau, homeowner at 1056 Utica Lane. Just wanted to point out that I was in here and haven't heard anything about any committee. Michelle does own that house. Her son and daughter-in-law live there with their children. I don't believe Jesse or Kyle heard anything either. So just wanted to point that out there.
Okay, thank you for that, Justin. Any other additional public comment?
Oh, sorry, it looks like there's a comment that's in the chat.
yeah.
I'll make sure we have that. Okay.
Was it 75K or 186K for the San Joaquin contract? Sorry, I'm listening while on a plane to Guam. I think this needs to be clarified from the community. Comments I've heard, thank you. Sorry, I can't comment out loud, I'm on a plane.
The contract was for $170,000, for which we were billed $75,000.
So you're right on
Rose,
both
you
of
just
those two. So it is a $175,000 contract, of which we have $170,000 contract, of which we've expended only 75. So both numbers are correct. Okay, at this point, I'm gonna close public comment. I don't see any other comments unless you do, Rose. No. Okay, so bringing it back to council, not a lot more input. What are your thoughts, guys?
No, I'm fine with the two, the designate two.
Yeah, so
I'm just not, I don't want it open to like 16 new people.
Right, right.
I'm fine. I think the outreach needs to be done down there. I have no
Yeah,
issue
if
with
they
it.
wanna,
but-
if they wanna decide who that is.
Are we going with the standard land use outreach, which would be whoever the owner of record is? Or are we just doing whoever's living there?
I think we should do owner of record. I think we should reach out, and if you get too much involvement, then they need to appoint two. Everybody's invited to attend, but we're looking for seats at the table to include two from that area, as well as adding an ADA individual.
Two
Homeowners, correct. I believe
Okay,
it should be
not
homeowners.
rent.
Correct.
I believe it should be homeowners.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, I would say that what if a homeowner wants to appoint their renter as a spokesperson? That happens in right-of-way negotiations and acquisitions all the time. So you can appoint somebody, if you live in Nebraska, that's your home that you rent, but your son and daughter-in-law live there, you can appoint somebody as your spokesperson. Would you guys agree to that?
Do we have anyone living in Nebraska?
Not to my knowledge.
And is it just limited to Utica? Do we wanna go up to Crystal?
I know that.
Like you said, like I ran into Simone, she's staring over the expansion area every
Right.
day.
I work with Mrs. Hayes all the time. who was
Well,
like,
I think the outreach needs to be the 300-foot
For sure.
for the meetings, but you're talking about for the table, for the design committee.
Yeah.
So for the meetings, you want us to send out, mail out notices 300 feet from the park?
Why not? We do that for
For land.
land use,
But
why would,
these are public meetings that are open.
For the same reason we don't do that for all of our meetings, for all of our projects for ordinances
So-
and.
My point is that we've missed the mark on public notification on this
Right.
project, and we've missed it drastically. And it's been obvious both publicly and everything. So I think we're trying to get the train back on the track, and I don't think you can overkill outreach. I don't think, if you send out a mailer to 300, is it 300 feet, 300 yards? What am I trying to say? 300 feet. And letting them know that this design committee is meeting on these dates at these times. I don't think that that's going to hurt anything.
And one mailer announcing the whole schedule.
I think so. I think that would be wonderful.
Not one for each.
No. If you have like monthly meetings set out for the
Yeah,
dates and the time.
yeah,
One mailer.
one
One mailer.
mailer.
I absolutely think that would be appropriate. But I personally think that we should have two individuals that are property owners or appointed property owner, appointed spokespeople that are residents at Utica.
If they want to,
Isabel.
I also just think that's extremely important, so that way that just in case one of them can't make it, at least there is still representation there. And like, I mean, we do it for our meetings, right? One of us can't go, we've got alternates.
Certainly.
But like we have said over and over again, we very obviously missed the mark, and I don't want that to happen again. We can't let that happen again.
And then at that point, we would be bringing the happenings from the meeting back to our city council meeting at the next, and you would be giving your update as to what happened during the meeting. Is that how it would work? Like, not minutes, but your design committee's progress?
Progress generally in that we've gotten this far on the design of the playground, or you don't want to know exactly what equipment we agreed to, I'm assuming.
Well, I want to know everything personally. I want to know everything, but I just want there to be progress and transparency. I don't think anything should be withheld.
So I guess
and
I need clarification
Post the meeting,
what
it,
what you're asking for.
So-
The level of detail on the project that you're asking for and
So-
frequency of report.
okay, so I'm gonna step here for 1 second. So I would say a total of 13, because you have 11 plus from Stelty, and one more homeowner would be 13.
gotcha,
Total of 13 people on that committee,
gotcha,
Right.
no more. Sent out to homeowners or appointed by homeowner,
gotcha.
correct?
Yeah.
300-foot mailer sent out to anybody, any home within 300 feet of the park.
Owners of it.
Owners, again, one time, stating the date, stating the schedule of a meeting.
Yep.
Okay, does that solidify that?
I think that's all.
And then on Rebecca's thing, I think you're asking something different.
Like
The level
reporting
of
back.
detail of reporting back at the city
Yes.
council meeting,
Mhm.
you're gonna be doing 2 meetings then. You're gonna be doing a meeting here, and then you're gonna do another complete meeting here, because we're gonna have a whole discussion. So, I mean, I'm just after a brief synopsis here at this meeting, and if I wanna know what's going on, I need to attend these meetings, or I'm trusting Jessica Johnson, Jesse Gibbs, and these guys to make those decisions, and these guys are the stakeholders on this committee. I mean, we could go hours every meeting on this.
No, I think if I can speak to that,
Okay.
I think that at the meetings that you're going to be doing the rural recreation and tourism program, Lightner Mine expansion project update, I would think at the very least you should be telling us what happened at the October lunch meeting, and what progress was made with the committee. I don't think you need to give me play-by-play, but I think an update would be appreciated
An update,
for what progress was made with the
Right.
design. Yeah, and
okay.
anything else that happened in
General
the,
progress of,
yeah, I don't understand why this is so hard.
just want to make sure we get the.
Well, you just said you wanted every detail.
Yeah.
No, not every detail. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
need to know when people took a bathroom break. I just
Oh,
need to know
okay.
what happened at the meeting. I will likely attend the meetings as I can, but I think we cannot do too much outreach. So I think we need to be fully transparent, and I don't think it should be withholding anything. Caroline, do you have anything to say on this? Isabel?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think a synopsis would be great, and I think, to clarify Jen's comment, I think what you were saying is just that you want to be in the know of what's going on, correct? Not that you're asking for the full. Because like you, I just really just want to be in the know of what's going on and make sure that like I said, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it was our biggest project, I think we dropped the ball, I think, last meeting we said we were gonna reach out to everybody, and so we really need to do what we say we're gonna do.
Before we move on, so is council asking to have an update on every single meeting for you to work? Over the next
So
year?
I have requested that, and I would like for that item to stay, and I think that after these meetings, which it's just monthly, right? So whenever it's after that, to incorporate into our update, whatever updates you have from that meeting. That's my opinion on that.
So once a month,
Once-
this board meets once a month. So we get the once a month meeting.
So
Or
from
once a
here
month.
on out, it would be monthly rather than each meeting, Isabel. Are you okay?
No, I'm
Oh.
still saying, I want the each meeting, but incorporated into that additionally is the one. As I've said again, and I'll keep saying it, this is our biggest project, so it absolutely, in my opinion, needs to be updated every meeting. People, that way, as I said before, keep saying it, if they want to just tune into the first 40 minutes as we are right now, then they can hear that and move on with their day. But it's the biggest project, so we really need to give it the attention it deserves from the public.
Okay, Carolyn.
That is my opinion, and
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with keeping this on there until we feel that it's, back on the track. The train's back on the track. Do you have anything to say to that?
No, my only thing is I'd go the once a month with after the meeting, just for staff time and everything else. Because this is a big project and there's gonna be a lot of staff. But either way.
Maybe at some point?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we
I
can
think
get to at some point, we can
we'll-
drop it off,
And revisit it.
but there we go.
All right.
2 every meeting.
Thank you so much, Amy, for your update. Moving on to item B. This is a public hearing to introduce, waive the first reading, hold the public hearing, and schedule October 3rd, 2023 to consider adopting ordinance 534, relocating housing-related codes to a new chapter, which is 17.52 housing, with amendments to section 1706.200, reasonable accommodation, allowing some administrative approvals and clarifying section 17.06170, accessory buildings. Amy.
Mayor and council members, the planning commission heard this item last week and, recommended approval to the council on a 5-0 vote with one amendment to the code on section 1706-220. The provisions in the code for low barrier navigation centers, this is clerical. Basically says that the section remains in effect until January 1st, 2027, and as of that date is repealed. One of our eagle eye commissioners suggested we put unless otherwise extended by the state to avoid having to come back to you. Should the state extend the low barrier navigation provisions and incorporating that. Otherwise, this is basically clerical. The administrative approval would allow staff level approval of things like if somebody needs a wheelchair ramp. And it needs to go slightly into the setback, we would still do notifications 300 feet, we'd still do advisory agency notices. We would not take the extra 60 days it takes to go through the planning commission in conjunction with building permit. So that's what would happen with your approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Has questions?
So
Isabel?
no question.
So the way I read this, Amy, you can clarify for me, this is just an administrative cleanup to put everything all in one chapter.
For housing, yes, so you don't have to search for it. Correct.
So it's just that. So it doesn't change anything really.
It does allow staff at the city level to approve reasonable accommodations.
Okay.
In conjunction with a building permit for disabled access.
Okay, thank you. That's the way I read it. Public comment on this item, please. Anybody online? Seeing no public comment, I'd like to bring this back. We are not doing anything tonight. This is just opening for the, waiving the first reading, and we're setting October 3rd as the second reading on this item.
Correct, right.
All right. Thank you. Item 7C, this is also a public hearing to introduce ordinance 535, waive the first reading, hold a public hearing, and schedule October 3rd, 2023 to consider adopting ordinance 535, allowing the city planner discretion to approve conditional use permits for projects valued at less than $250,000 and exempt from the CEQA Act.
Mayor and council members, the LEAP grant that we're currently administering has a provision in it that we streamline our permitting process wherever possible. We've already streamlined the process for site plan reviews and site development permits, allowing the city planner to still go through the same process, still do the notifications, still talk to advisory agencies, but where there are no objections to go ahead and issue it in-house, still subject to appeal, but again, streamlining the process. And we're asking to add conditional use permits to that, to be able to do that, as well as what's already been approved for site plans, site development permits. We've had this come up in a few cases. Hair salons, for example, because they create smells, those require a conditional use permit. And there are some small businesses who they're discouraged from going through such a long process. They hear, oh gosh, I'm gonna go speak in public. And this would help streamline that process for them, get into business quicker if we have this provision. And other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So do you think with our current ordinance, Amy, do you think that small businesses have been like deterred? Or, I mean, because they don't want to go to planning or because of the length of time that it takes? Is that-
Intimidated would be the appropriate phrase.
So do you
When
think,
somebody's not used to this process, it's very intimidating for them.
yeah. So this would make it much easier.
It would make it easier. Especially for small businesses. Obviously, over a $250,000 business, everybody's gonna hear about it. That's right.
And the business is being valued at that time based on what they're going to be putting into it? Or how do they have a value when they haven't really established a business yet?
They do an approximation. Yeah, they can usually give a set of it. I've never had somebody have trouble with it.
All right. Questions? Good job. Okay, public comment. Okay, public comment on this one? Seeing no public comment, we'll be closing public comment and coming back on October 3rd for the second reading on this item. Item 7D, this is also a public hearing. Introduce ordinance 536. Waive the first reading, hold a public hearing, and set October 3rd to consider renaming chapter 1706 as general provisions and exceptions and adding, consolidating, amending, or updating provisions for mobile food vendors, garage sales, temporary construction trailers, recreation vehicles of storage and living, special events permits, certificates of occupancy, storage containers, cottage food operations, and movie sets, amending and updating excessive slopes, temporary and seasonal sales stands, accepting farming and ranching practices, construction in floodplains, occupancy changes in commercial buildings, in commercial zones, and eliminating standards for auto wrecking yards.
Mayor and council members, there's always a general provisions and exceptions section in a code where you put everything else.
I see that.
Yes, I just read it. And as you can see, it has a broad range of items. And we've tried to clean up as much as we possibly could in this particular chapter. I'll go over briefly because there is so much. Mobile food vendors, basically, we have had those in 3 different sections in the code, where we brought them all together in one place. We've also made it clear temporary and seasonal sales stands versus mobile food vendors, how there's a difference. And the main thing here is, if you're gonna be for 3 days, we're gonna have to get a business license. And there's many reasons for that. Especially food vendors, they don't always go to the health department. Sometimes they'll do it out at their house and then bring their food out and somebody gets food poisoning and then we get to hear why we're not regulating them. Or they will do it on somebody's private property without permission. Most frequently, they do it in the Caltrans right of way. That is a very common practice. 4 days or more, we go through the administrative conditional use permit process. Again, making it very clear that we will still have you get a business license, still have you go through the proper health department procedures. Certificates of occupancy, this is a requirement in the state code, but we're trying to put it in this code so that the public is well aware that before you go and occupy a building, you can't just do a pop-up. You have to make sure that the fire marshal has made sure that there aren't flammable materials in there, et cetera, before you do anything. Garage sales were only ever addressed in one single portion of the code, business attraction and expansion. And we thought it was important to do what 90% of the codes in the state do, and that is limit you to 3 days annually. That is a standard I've seen across the state. Temporary construction pits, trailers, and construction yards. The Planning Commission on a 5-0 vote recommended that we recommend to the council that you approve this code, but with one recommendation that in the future updates of the code, that in this section regarding temporary construction trailers and construction yards, we will in the future address the storage of construction equipment on property also, because evidently people will start to build something, stop building, their building permit expires, and guess what? We have a bunch of equipment and an equipment storage yard in somebody's residential neighborhood. And we also are clarifying that you cannot live in any of those kinds of structures. Recreational vehicles, trailers, boat storage, where previously the residential ag with a building permit, you could live in an RV. We no longer have residential ag. So to make it really easy and clear, we clarified here, don't live in an RV, period, anywhere. And because people often talk about, well, can I just store it here? We're adding a reference to storage also. Don't store it in your front yard setback. You can store it in a driveway and store it behind. Don't put your trailer in your front yard and or blocking the street. Special events and special event permits. We've always had a permitting process for this. It's just never been in our code. Storage containers. This is something that's popping up a little more frequently, and it's been on the to-do list for quite some time. Those are like those land, sea, cargo containers. Basically, they're becoming a little more popular because some people think that they can provide housing. And so we may see these popping up a little more frequently. Cottage food operations have been around for 7-8 years. We've just never put provisions in our code. You're allowed to have some flexibility in your code regarding cottage food operations. The Planning Commission talked about alternatives for restricting them to be not within 300 feet of each other versus not being allowed within 300 feet of each other. It's sort of a standard that is applied to various uses. Movie sets, we talked to Martin about that. We've never had a provision that said, what happens if somebody wants to do a movie in town? So we added those provisions. The rest are clarifications. It used to just say slopes. We made it clear we were talking about excessive slopes. And by that I mean 30% or more. I'll be happy if it's 20%, but the code has always said 30%. Home occupation criteria, farming and ranching practices. We previously referenced old zoning districts that we no longer have. We updated it. Construction in floodplains, it used to just say floodplains, we clarified. And then standards for auto wrecking yards. We no longer have that as a permitted use, auto wrecking yard in the city limits, so we no longer need standards for it. And with that, I would be happy to answer the questions.
No.
I have a question.
Okay,
So how do we plan on enforcing all of this?
You mean, basically, this is done to make it easier to enforce by making it clear when it is and is not a violation. We have always enforced these provisions, but in talking with our code enforcement officers, they would like it to be more clear in the code so that it makes it easier for them to enforce these provisions. Does that answer?
Okay. That does answer my question. So this one, obviously it has a lot and it's sort of a hodgepodge of things. And so I would actually personally like to not waive this first reading, and if we can, have that first reading at the next meeting. I just feel like there's a lot in there when I'm hesitant, like reading on page 104, what was it, 1706.120, and the acceptable farming and ranching practices. I just feel like if I'm reading this correctly, that we start stripping away property owners' ability to apply for rural benefits. And in that, we are becoming more kind of like a city, right? Which is, I know that's what we are, but at the same time, we, in a sense, lose our charm. And I just feel like there were things that go way back into annexation. And I know, like you said, it's referencing things or terms that don't exist anymore. But I want to really take our time with this one, because I just feel like I personally am not comfortable. I would just like more time, like I said, to not waive the first reading. But that's my comments on this one.
Madam Mayor, if I may address that. I think it might be helpful to look at the red line and strikeout version that the Planning Commission reviewed. And then you would see that 1706.120, there were only changes in that it used to reference recreational ag and recreational districts. We've simply changed that to say residential estate 5-acre minimum now, because we no longer have RA and special planning. Otherwise, we have made 0 change to that section. There are no significant changes. So I would suggest looking at the red line strikeout, because looking at the final version makes it look like we've created a whole new thing, when in fact, if you actually look at the red line strikeout, you'll see that it is not.
So it was always 5 acres on that item, 1706.120.
We changed that one.
No, we got rid of RA district, and now it's RA5.
So the clarification is in the terminology of the new
Yeah,
RA5.
it would do us no good to say RA, because that doesn't exist anymore.
It's not in our general.
So there's a lot of
It does
changes
look like a
like
change.
that through here. And when you see the clean version, it looks like, whoa, completely new and regulatory, when in fact, a lot of it is clarification. And yes, there is a lot in here.
There is a lot. There was a lot of reading. I have, obviously you worked with our code compliance and inspection team so that they feel that this would make it easier
Yes,
to enforce.
yes.
Well, and I think it does a couple things. It establishes a clear understanding of what land use can happen, which makes it easier for staff to work with someone. But it also allows the building official and code compliance, when there's a problem, to be able to point to it more clearly why it's a problem.
And it is a lot.
Yeah, I don't-
And there will be, again, we had this legal to go to the planning commission, so it was legal quite some time ago. And they discussed it at a public hearing, and now we're having this public hearing, and we'll have a third public hearing in another 2 weeks,
October 3rd.
October 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So the big change is the addition of storage containers. That's all new.
and cottage food operations, which is already in state law.
So where did the
big
storage
change-
container portion, I guess, come from? Is that, would you get it from somewhere else or?
Yes, I took it directly from Tuolumne counties because I'd written theirs. So I just cut and pasted it.
I don't disagree with Councilmember Moncada's recommendation that there's a lot of reading to do. I guess, we get this on Friday and we have it all weekend, and then we're supposed to be fluent in it, with it, so I'm not. But I do see that we have time to come back on October 3rd. I would hope that the public would comment on this if they have any kind of pushback or reason to think that it shouldn't be changed in this way. Carolyn, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I just, it was sort of along the lines with what Isabel is saying, just, is this gonna be on an honor system, like the mobile food vendors and things like that? Are we asking them, like, if you're gonna be participating in our city within, more than 3 days, please, get the right permitting for that. So it's self-regulating, and then if somebody turns them in.
99% of the time.
Okay,
It's when they turn them in.
okay.
Yeah, and we don't have a code to go to that's clear on how we go
Where it
about
falls.
enforcing it.
I can see that. Okay, well, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing and see if any members of the public have any comments on this. Seeing any online, Rose? Okay, so bringing it back, do we need more time with this? Do we want to waive this first hearing or this first reading, I'm sorry, or do we want to go to October 3rd for the first reading?
And it's October 7th. That gives people 2 weeks to do that.
Okay.
So what are we doing?
Stay the same.
Stay in the same.
Goes October 3rd. All right, thank you, Amy. Item E. This is to introduce ordinance 537, waive the first reading and hold a public hearing for October 3rd to consider adding a new section 1703220 addressing gas stations. Amy?
Mayor and council members, we would ask that you continue this to October 17th.
Okay.
In order to, October 17th, to allow the planning commission additional time to work through this. We did notify all gas station owners in town, as well as those we knew were planning gas stations, and they came up with a lot of comments that were very useful, and we'd like to incorporate those before moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, so are you gonna go back to the planning commission?
Yes.
Okay.
Item 7F, this is a public hearing to introduce ordinance 538, waive the first reading and hold a public hearing and set October 3rd to consider adding a new section 1706210 addressing vacant buildings. Amy?
Mayor and council members, this is largely an economic development tool. Buildings that stay vacant, they often deteriorate, sometimes they don't. But when they're vacant, they are more susceptible to calls to our police department. They often can become infested with rodents, as we've learned. They have an increased fire risk, and they do not contribute to economic development. There was a local jurisdiction that basically did a study on a vacant building in town that became a 2,500 square foot coffee shop. And if it had been allowed to be vacant, they did a budget determining how much was lost in rent, how much was lost in all of the businesses that were associated with keeping that business running. And it came out very close to $500,000, because when you don't actually think about it, but when there's one business vacant, they're not going out and getting supplies from anybody. They're not talking to real estate agents who they're also helping to keep employed. They're not talking to lawyers for their rental agreements, blah, blah, blah. So there are a whole bunch of different businesses that become associated with this. They've also done lots and lots of studies on how it depresses property immediately adjacent, as well as the property itself deteriorating, lowering values. So this was reviewed by the Planning Commission on at our last meeting, and it was recommended for approval on a vote of 4-1. The objection raised was that the addition of another fee. It was felt that we have mechanisms already. Didn't need to add a fee for registering the building or for monitoring the building, which actually is a surprisingly common activity. I stopped counting at 50
when I reviewed the other jurisdictions in California who have both a monitoring fee and a registration fee for vacant buildings, so it is quite common. And I also wanted to point out that the general plan recommends that we also adopt some programs to support this vacant building program. It's things like the Mills Act, so that if you have an historic building and you want to invest money in it, you can get a tax credit. And so this comes with a recommendation in the staff report that we would also be pursuing all of those incentive programs that would help support maybe just one or two, but some buildings to stop being vacant and open for business so that it doesn't look like we have it downtown, et cetera, et cetera. I'd be happy to answer any questions. It has several tiers in it. You register it, you pay a monitoring fee after it's been vacant for a particular period of time. You can also do a vacant building plan. So let's say you've got a long-term renovation that's gonna happen, or it's way out in the future. You at least turn in a timeline that tells us it's gonna take me this long, maybe a little bit longer than your code allows, but here are the dates and the milestones that I plan to achieve. And then if you don't, then we can start implementing alternative versions of this.
And then the police chief can also speak to what vacant buildings do in terms of impacts too.
Obviously, I'm less on the economic development portion of this, but the risk management portion as the police department. And although we haven't experienced it, we have experienced incidents involving squatters and residences that have caused fires. We've had at least 3 to 4 fires caused by transients that I'm aware of during my tenure. Obviously, Ghost Canyon was the biggest one. But we had a vacant residence that burned down as a result of a squatting situation. Vacant buildings become a target for these people, especially in the wintertime when things get cold and they want to get indoors and it's raining. It's a vacant building, they know there's nobody in there. A lot of times they're not secured real well and it's easy to gain entry. They may start a fire inside. They may intentionally, purposefully, burn it. If you look online and just search, vacant building fires, you'll see hundreds of articles, news articles on squatters or homeless or transients, whether it's arson, accidental, a candle that was lit to keep people warm inside that's caused the fire. So just from my perspective as the police chief and looking at risk management, the risk management side of it, it would be nice to know that we know that these buildings are being taken care of, monitored, and somebody's checking on them on a regular basis, because a lot of vacant buildings, a lot of time, maybe the owner lives, out of state. So it could go vacant for months and months and nobody knows. And next thing you know, you've got a whole family or group of people living inside of it without the knowledge of anybody. So if there was a monitoring process that would at least alert us. A lot of times we get calls from businesses or whatever that maybe they see somebody entered into a vacant business or something like that, and we'll get dispatched to go check it out. Luckily, those situations have not resulted in big damage or anything, but there has been, vandalisms where people have obviously forced entry into these locations, whether property was stolen or not. That occurs on occasion as well, but just from my perspective, any kind of securities that we can create for the city to help avoid those things from happening, I'm definitely a supporter of other stuff. If you have any specific questions regarding it, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Thank you.
And one last point, the fee is not included in here. I have not estimated a fee. I will tell you that Calaveras County, surprisingly enough, their code actually includes a provision for foreclosures because it led to vacant properties. And they currently charge $450 for a registration fee. So it's not, it is heard of locally. And just to give you a ballpark idea of what we're talking about, I've seen that registration fee about that amount in other jurisdictions. They've got as high as $2,500 a year, but they rarely go too much lower than what Calaveras are charged for their foreclosures and vacant properties. Any questions?
I got all sorts of
I know, me
questions,
too.
but I'll hit you up. I mean, I think there's really good parts to this. Like the post the sign with the name 24 hours working contact, and for emergency contacts, I think there's a lot of good in it, but I don't know. Got mixed emotions on telling people what to do with their property. So, but it is economic development, I understand that too, so I will talk to you offline.
I do have a quick question about the fee.
Yeah.
So at any time that fee could be imposed, I see that it's not to be prorated or whatever it is read. So if somebody owns property and for whatever reason that property becomes vacant in, let's say, October or November, and the holidays and they get swept away, they don't do anything with that property for the 60 days, that fee could come into play. And
Not until after the 60 days has passed, and not until after you've been given a notice.
so there's a process.
Yeah, and so then you would pay the registration fee. Again, you don't do that if you've got it for rent, if you have a building permit pulled and you're doing something with the property.
You just have to show some sort of forward movement.
Some
in an
sort of
official
forward movement,
capacity.
even a plan.
Yeah, okay. I have a question. How many vacant businesses do we have? Do you know?
Did not do an inventory.
Okay. On the incentive programs, because I do feel like incentive programs might be received a little bit better.
A carrot for the state?
Yeah. So, and I know we set some money aside for economic development. So, just looking at that. So, what incentive programs are you like thinking about, or are you really dedicated to that?
Most of the incentive programs target historic preservation and rehabilitation and putting to use old buildings for new uses. So the Mills Act is one of the primary tools where people actually see something that's worth getting. It also qualifies them for federal tax incentives, which they could get now. But I think the Mills Act is a tool we're not using to the extent that we could. I think large businesses, commercial businesses downtown, you do some rehabilitation on that, you get a substantial property tax incentive. And does that bankrupt a county or a city when that happens? No. They've been operating this in Tuolumne County for about 30 years, and they'd be hard pressed to tell you they've lost a cent. Because it gets made up for in sales taxes and
It's gonna get made up in sales
Revenues.
tax and also appreciable assessed value on the other buildings in the area. And I think, the other thing that concerns me about the number of vacant buildings that are downtown is those are, many of those buildings downtown are like national treasures. So they're not just known by city residents, they're known, throughout the county, and they're emphasized by our museum throughout the world. So when those buildings are in disrepair for decades, we run the risk of those historic buildings being gone. I mean, they're not going to be able to be rebuilt at some point. So, my concern is just the lack of maintenance that's happening on some of these buildings, and they are true historic buildings that are well known throughout, Angels Camp's history, through Calaveras County's history. They're advertised throughout the museum. And, I think it's sad sometimes of the disrepair on some of the buildings down there, for sure. So, I think anything that we can do to try to incentivize, as much as possible, but at some point, it is causing a detriment to the businesses that are down there, the other property owners that are down there that are, renting or they're running an established business down there. And, this is something that we've kind of talked about, since I got here, in terms of what can we do to address the vacant buildings from the city. Don't have a ton of options.
What's the, and it might be in here and I just missed it, but is there any, if you don't pay this money, if we approve this and they don't pay, they just say, I'm not gonna pay, what's the retribution, like what's the,
You can pay them property.
oh, you can leave the property, okay.
Because it's not a fine.
Sorry, Carolyn, you asked a question and I missed the answer.
You can
You
leave
can
the property. It's just like if you were told to cut your weeds, you can, and we have to go in and do it. The other portion of this, the registration and monitoring fee, it's to cover the chief's time, when he has to go out there on calls. So that's how you go, that's why you don't have a fee established here. It's because I have to determine by talking to the police chief, fire chief, how frequently they have to go to these. How often does the code enforcement officer have to go out? And it would equal the cost for the city, which currently we don't get back when we have to go to these vacant buildings. That covers this cost. You want your building to be vacant? That's fine. But you need to reimburse us for doing the extra police activity necessary to keep it from being destroyed.
And the registration, the fee.
Registration
We
and
haven't
monitoring fee, yeah. You can make them one fee,
That's the county, Calaveras County is $450 for one fee.
yes.
There's not two, okay. Sorry.
And that includes 2 inspections. If you go over that, it's an additional $180 per inspection. And if you keep it vacant for more than 365 days, then they charge you a renewal fee. There are some jurisdictions that start at $2,500. And if you stay vacant, they go to $5,000 the following year.
If vacant over how long?
Over a year.
Yeah, so they just keep going higher and higher every year. And some of them have put a maximum of 10,000 on it. Wow. Hayward.
Councilmember Moncada. Would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, so, like, I mean, I agree with what Alvin and Caroline brought up in terms of, obviously the incentive program and then, you know, having contact info and that, but I think, same as I asked before, and Caroline kind of touched on that, how do we plan on, enforcing this? Because I know as it is, we've only got a code compliance person a couple days a week, and I don't know, yeah, so that's my first question, is how do we plan on enforcing this?
So we do have code compliance a couple days a week. We also have staff that have spent the last year getting trained by code compliance. So, you know, we try to emphasize courtesy notifications and stay away from administrative citations. And most of the time, they are
Voluntary
they're
compliance.
voluntary compliance. And so that's just as easy as and we get told all the time, we get told all the time about vacant buildings downtown. So it's never a mystery, what's happening or what's not happening, down there. So it's just a matter of, staff are going to identify it's a vacant building. They're going to send out a courtesy notice. And then staff would work with those particular property owners to kind of give them the guidelines associated with this program, and then go from there. I would say most are just going to voluntarily comply. They're either going to give us a plan and they're going to say, this is what I'm doing, or, okay, I just pulled a building permit, or, something of that nature. I think it's unlikely we're gonna have too much non-compliance, but if we do, that would be the one, it's not gonna be very many, and that would be the one that we would have to probably go through some sort of a more hands-on process for.
And what happens if they don't, like say they say, yes, we've got this plan, here's our plan, here Amy, here's our plan. And then a year goes by and they haven't been working on their plan at all, so how does that get addressed?
So there's a bunch of steps. Before you get to the plan, we've tried to have them get a building permit.
Right.
We've tried to get them to put it up for rent, for sale, for lease. So we strike out on that, we strike out on that. Then they give us a plan, so then there's another year. So we're probably talking 2 years of vacant building. And then it is declared a public nuisance and it becomes a code compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to open the public hearing.
Sorry, Jen, I have other questions, Jen.
Okay, ahead,
So
Susan.
I just, sorry, and I may have just confused this, but we pulled the language, was this what you said was from Tuolumne County, or was that,
No.
like I said, I think I might be getting
No,
confused.
I took approximately 50 different jurisdictions. And I took the most
Okay.
common portions of all of their plans, places like Ceres, Waterford, I could give you the whole list, but Eureka, lots of jurisdictions like that. And they all have the same components, over and over and over again. So I pulled out the most common components. When there was a range, some people will only let you be vacant for 10 days before this kicks in, and some people will allow it to go to 90 days. So I split the difference and made it 60, figuring, okay, maybe 30 is too little, 90 seems maybe too big, and hit 60. So those were the changes I made from other jurisdictions, was trying to find an average that might fit our circumstances.
Okay, got it. I ultimately understand the risk management side of it, but I struggle. I really struggle with this one and infringing on property owners and their rights. And so, yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me too. That's all of my notes. Land use rights, government imposing, I don't know how I feel about it. I think we're gonna take this time. I do want to open the public hearing. I want to hear from the public at this time. Any public comment or discussion on this matter?
Hi, Julie Douglas. I have a business, Crafty Chicks and Company in downtown Angels Camp. I want to say I really appreciate the progress, the proposal of this whole idea. Listening to what Amy had to say about what she's pulled from the other jurisdictions, to me, a $450 fee is too low. I understand what Jennifer is saying, Mayor Herndon, about infringing on property owners' rights, but I also feel like all of these buildings are a huge detriment to the vitality of our downtown district. We are a historical district. I think that's very important. That's what brings people to our town. I'm gonna tell you, 60% of my business, and I know that of some of my other neighbors, comes from tourism, because we are a small town. We have 3,800 people, we're a small county. So for a business like mine to be able to serve not only my locals, but the tourists that come to our area, it's hard because we hear this, all of us downtown hear this day after day after day. Why is everything empty? Why are all these beautiful buildings empty? Why are these places looking run down? And it's really frustrating. It really does affect all of us downtown. I wish more of us were here tonight. I did reach out to other people, but it's really heartbreaking when you think about it. I mean, I get asked all day long by customers, why is this beautiful mercantile building, why is it empty? Why is the one next to it empty? So it's really frustrating to hear all this. It's hard because people make the trip to come to Angels Camp and they get here and, one of the first things they do is head downtown. And it's like, is this enough to even keep people coming back? And sadly, it's not. I mean, we have a huge vacancy problem. And I really hope we can implement a program like this. I liked all of the features of this, reading on this, but I don't think $450 is gonna be enough of an incentive for people, especially if they're paying a $300 a month water bill for a vacant building. If they have no problem paying that every month, $450 is nothing to them. I don't know if it's a bigger tax write-off for them, I don't know. But to me, if you own a building in a historical district, you have a responsibility not only to your community, but to your fellow property and business owners. So I seriously hope that this does pass because it's not looking good for our downtown.
Julie, how long have you been in that space?
4.5 years.
And the mercantile's been empty that long?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's been empty. It's been,
It was a restaurant for a minute.
It's been probably, gosh, what was it?
Maybe six
years.
2017.
2017 was the restaurant was there last.
Yeah, it was there just a hot minute, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
I want to ditto everything she said, but I think.
Let's have you introduce yourself, please.
Oh, Pam Shoemaker, I own Stories and Stones.
Okay.
I think I agree with all this, but when a property owner refuses to rent their property, I don't see how this provision helps that. And there's one property owner in that we all know that is not renting their property. And how does this fix that? That's my question.
I agree with him. I agree.
Tina Gonzalez, I live in Bar 20, I don't live in the city, but I do have a heart here, and I do care about the city very much. I have a couple of questions on this. Like she said, you know, they're gonna charge a $450 fee, big whoopie-doo. The $2,500 to $3,000 should be laid on their head. They don't care. The person that owns these properties can either, number one, afford to repair it and bring it up to code. Is there a program for them to bring it up to code? There's a lot of old buildings here that are not gonna be able to get up to code unless it's expensive. And some owners are elderly or out of the area and they don't have the money or even care to even look at the building anymore. Number two, we wanna push this to get businesses in here. But let's say I own the Mercantile and I have a building permit. So you guys are off my back. So I got this building permit and I got it for 60 days. So that gives me 2 months, even though nobody's still in it, there's nothing happening there. So then I go 90 days and you guys knock on my door and go, hey, you know what? Come on, kick down. You need to do something with your building here. This is our code and our enforcement here. Okay, I go and get another building permit. There's another 60 days. Who's to say they won't be playing this game? So we need to be able to stand up and say, look, you guys, this is a shutdown. You are 60 days, you're done. And who's to say that they don't have a rental agreement and it still stays in? There needs to be strong code enforcement. I have no problem with what you guys are doing at all because I want to shop downtown. I really like downtown. But I hear from people from Murphy's all the time. We go to Murphy's and skip Angels, there's nothing in Angels anymore. And it breaks my heart. So if we're gonna do this, if you guys are gonna do this, I don't think the $400, it's chump change, it's a nickel in their shoe. You need to really lay on their heart and say, excuse me, but you know what? We really care about our town and you should also. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
We do have one online.
Okay. I have something.
My only comment is that if you have a dog, it's your responsibility to take care of the dog. If it gets hurt, breaks its leg, needs a shot, throws up, whatever it is, you take care of the dog. Same thing with a business downtown. If you own a building downtown, it's your responsibility to take care of it because it's not just your building. It directly affects the other businesses in the area. So if you don't want to do that, then sell the building. There's people that come into my business all the time looking for places to rent, looking for places to buy. There's no reason why you can't put a for sale sign and sell the building. I mean, just sell it. We would sell those buildings all day long. So I am absolutely in agreement with not having the government interfere in my business. I'm probably the biggest advocate of that. However, there is a responsibility when you own something. You do not have to own it. You don't have to own it. But if you do own it, you should take care of it.
I don't know how to do it.
Okay, we'll go with the online comment, please, Rose.
Kathy?
Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is, okay, hi, Kathy Collins, 2.9 Leaf Court. I've been 7 or 8 years on the Destination Angels Camp Board, and I can't tell you how many times this has been up for discussion, and I mean, everybody knows this. So why there would be any questioning of why this should be enforced or put into place is just beyond me. The property owner rights, really, what about the city, all of us, all of the population? What about our rights? We have a right to have a vibrant downtown. We have got, as the last person said, we've got people that would like to still open their businesses here. We've watched how many businesses come and go, and half of the reason is because there isn't enough other business supporting the businesses that are here. They come and they go. And to give these property owners any more rights than they already have is just ridiculous. They're ruining our downtown. I've been living here for 22 years now, and my goal in life at the time I moved here was to really try to make a difference and make this city what it should be. The only incorporated city in our county. So, city council members, I gotta tell you, worrying about these poor property owners and their rights is just, it's just really not a problem we should be worried about. They've had plenty of rights, plenty of opportunities. The fact that they don't want to rent their building is a problem for the rest of us. We're the people that have started big projects, and then, you know, their permit goes on hold or is expired. They get another one, like another person said, and then that expires, and then they have to get another one. Hey, something has to be done, and we've been all waiting for something to be done for a very long time. So I would submit that you just move this forward. Even if you start with only $450, it's a start. Something needs to be done. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments online?
Justin, you had your hand raised earlier. Did you want to comment?
Any other public? Okay, at this point, we will waive the first reading and move to go to October 3rd for the consideration of this.
Jen, may I have a question?
Go ahead.
Sorry, so are we in compliance right now with the Napa building and it being vacant?
No, and so we would have to get into compliance as well. We're not off limits because we're the city.
Okay, I was just curious.
Well, I mean, I think we have a plan, you can put that in a motion.
Well, and that's a great example because it's all about timing.
Right, but it will urge people to do that, you know, also.
All right. See this item on October 3rd. Moving on to item G, discussion and direction to apply for the Reconnecting Neighborhoods Grant. Rebecca.
Okay, so if you recall, Matt Satow came from Jubilee and he gave a presentation, several months ago about the Angels Creek Trail. And he talked about that phase one being, you know, at the time, probably a $6 million project. And we don't have $6 million. So we've been trying to look for other grant opportunities that would help fund that. So there's this Reconnecting Neighborhoods grant that we think would be a good solution for that. You know, because really the only grant funding that we have to date is CMAQ funding, which is that congestion mitigation and air quality funding that we've been, you know, working with council of governments. And we have been successful on multiple tranches of funding for that CMAQ. But it's just not enough. So the one caveat is it's a 20% match and we need to try to find the 20% match. So we're going to continue to try to identify other grant funding. It would have to be state funding, not federal funding, as a match component to this. It's entirely possible we might be able to negotiate a swap of CMAQ funding for like RSTP funding, which would be state. So I think there's ways that we might be able to scrounge together the 20%. This isn't also, it's not guaranteed, it's grant application. It could be not awarded. It's competitive. So I think it's one of the only options we have found to date where the dollars jive. It's just the 20% that we need to count and try to figure that component out.
Comments?
On, the prioritized disadvantaged communities, does it ask for a percentage, or what is the percentage they're looking for? And is it just within the city, or are they taking county numbers, do you know?
No, they would take ours.
Okay.
So generally what we do is we try to utilize the studies that we've used historically on our demographic information that demonstrates that we are in fact a disadvantaged community.
Okay, great.
And each individual grant tells you which website you go to determine
Yeah.
your disadvantage, and they're all different. So we did a CDBG study to make it clear that we qualify.
Okay, so we do qualify for that with the
We should,
disadvantaged
yes.
communities, okay, that's a great question.
Okay, looking for public, Isabel, do you have anything on this for quick questions? Before I go to the public comment on this issue? Any public comment online? Okay, so how do we feel about the risk for the 20% match?
So if you could make the motion to approve the resolution and sign the letter. Sorry, I didn't clarify.
So you
on
need
that.
the motion same vote,
Yeah. Mhm.
and do we need to poll, or can we?
No.
Okay. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the resolution and for the letter to be signed for pursuing the grant.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2375.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, item 7H. Provide direction to staff as to whether the city council vacancy created by the resignation of Councilmember Gretel Tiscornia should be filled either by appointment or by calling a special election. Deb?
So Doug.
I know, but I know, you know, but
I am considering dressing up as Doug for Halloween. So he's not listening, I'll just get the ball.
I'll just say you need to get that.
yeah, right? Okay.
So this item is something that council needs to consider as a result of former council member Tiscornia's resignation, which was effective August 31st. The vacancy needs to be filled for the remainder of her term. The choices are either for council to appoint somebody or to hold a special election. Whatever you decide to do, we've only got 60 days for it to occur, so the deadline's October 30th. If you decide to go with a special election, the downside is that the earliest that could be held would be March 5th, 2024. And costs run between $10,000 and $15,000 to do that. If you decide to appoint, we would recommend that you handle it in the way that the city's handled it in the past, which would be directing staff to solicit applications and then have some interviews.
And then also confirm that interviews would be held in public,
Yes.
similar to how we held them.
Yes, just how we have planning commission session.
And we think it would be 10 or 15,000 for the special election, even though we already have a presidential election. It's an election. Didn't we say it was gonna be a little bit cheaper than that, Rebecca?
That would be.
We
if
could
it
split
was-
it.
If there was other items on
Yeah.
Measure A.
I think measure A is maybe on there and we get, there's,
Right,
there's
that's
three,
what
we
I
can
thought.
split it
But
three.
why would we wanna wait?
No, I was asking. She stated 10 to 15. I thought it was like between 6 and 10 or something like that. If measure A goes on there.
If we share the costs.
Yeah.
But even, yeah, so that's a lot of money, and it's like, who's gonna wanna do that for 6 months?
Yeah, and this is, like Caroline just said, this is to complete the last term, the last segment of Gretel's term.
Yes.
This is, and then
Yes,
this
and then
individual would
whoever's
have,
appointed would need to run
regardless if we appoint or if they go on the measure.
regardless.
Yeah.
So whatever happens, it's just for the remainder of
Okay.
Greg's term.
So that would be silly if they have to, the special election on March 5th to get voted in and then have to run for reelection already in November. Yeah,
Well,
sorry,
yeah.
I didn't think about that.
I say we have city staff put it out there and see what we can get.
And I think the term ends December 31st.
December 31st.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Isabel, do you have anything you want to say to this one?
Yeah, I have a question. So by going out to application, would we then, how long, is it typical to leave it open for a certain amount of time? Is it something that we would then, conduct, like ask for, I'm looking at a calendar right now, so,
Yeah, what have we done in
Can
the
can I
past?
make a recommendation? I'm looking at the calendar too. I would say that we.
I was gonna say, can we collect on the 13th and do?
Yep, that's
On the
exactly
17th,
what I
whatever we
was
say,
thinking.
okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we can be pretty
So yeah,
serious.
and then,
Mhm.
agreed.
People, yeah, people heard the resignation at the last meeting. so
Correct.
It's circulating.
So you're thinking applications due
Now,
by
I'll open it
10/13?
tomorrow, if that's what you want. Keep it open until the 13th, and we'll bring it to the 17th. Well, we'll do it actually to the 12th, because then that'll
So
give
you
me
got-
time to put it together in the packet. all
10/12.
that
Are you in the office on 10/12?
stuff. Yes.
I just, mine was due, no one was in the office. Jeez, it was awkward.
Yeah, we have that strategic planning meeting if you want that.
Okay, great.
All day or all afternoon? Yeah.
Yes. But staff will be there till 4:30, so.
And then the
Yeah,
calendar.
I'm good with that, so that gives a good solid 3 weeks.
Right.
I think that seems reasonable. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? Anybody online? Okay, I'm confident that we've given clear direction. Rose, do you have any other questions?
My only other thing is, do you want me to post it in the newspaper or just use social media, website? Because if I post it in the newspaper, we'll have 1, maybe 2 weeks in the newspaper.
I think we've got planning in the
6 to 8.
newspaper. Have we done the other vacancies with
We
city
did,
council?
but we didn't get any, like, for the planning commission. I got nothing from the newspaper. I got it from social media, so.
Can we post that in the post office?
I was
Yes.
just asking,
Yeah.
yeah, let's do it in the post
We can do that.
I would say, I'd rather the post office than the
Okay.
paper.
Okay. And like I said, social media is gonna be on the website all night. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so no paper? No paper.
No paper.
Moving right along, we have item I, which is review and discussion regarding the city council appointments.
That would be great.
Yeah.
So because of the vacancy of Gretel leaving, we have to fulfill her requirements on the meetings that she would sit in on. So the Central Sierra Economic Development District, she was the alternate. CPPA, she was the current rep, so we need to fill that. The Museum Foundation, she was the alternate. And that's all I have, so.
No, all hazards.
All hazard. Oh, all hazard, sorry. I didn't highlight that, thank you. She was the current rep on that as well. So this is your opportunity too, to switch, if you want to move.
Well, this is temporary until we.
It will be
Right.
temporary. Mhm.
I'll take CPPA back. Or
Okay.
do you want it?
That's the one.
You wanna do all?
Do that. I just,
I don't wanna do all hazards.
I'll be the alternate for Central Sierra Economic Development.
That'd be great.
I can be the alternate for the Museum Foundation.
Oh, perfect.
Does that cover everything?
I can't.
And then,
Or let's go.
so wait, let's go back to CPPA. Are you alternate and you're?
give it to Karen. Oh, yeah, you're alternate.
Oh, you're alternate.
So I'll be alternate.
Yeah.
You and he goes on.
So who do we have for all hazards?
Chris. He's not here. It's him. I don't know if I
Is
can.
Scott already on that too?
What time do they usually meet?
It's a Tuesday from 1 to 2.
And it's a virtual meeting for
I can take it.
1 hour.
You are also an alternate, like the.
Am I an alternate?
You're an alternate.
I'll be your alternate.
You are.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'll just leave you there. I'll be the alternate.
Sorry, you okay, that's about, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, And again, it's temporary, right?
for like a month.
Okay, yeah. Public comment?
Oh, sorry, public comment on our little decision-making meeting we did. Anybody? Anybody want to step in and be an alternate? Please apply. Okay, seeing no public comment, I think we give direction on that one too, right?
On the CPC, is that in person or can you come in remote?
It's in person.
Okay.
They were doing it in CCW.
He's hit and miss.
Yeah.
He really is hit and miss. You have to look at the email, because he never puts it on the agenda.
It may not even happen in this short amount of time.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, item J is a discussion regarding, the Medbury code compliance issue for APN 064004033.
So when we met last time, it said, we would bring it back, to give you additional information, and then that was also giving him time to come into some compliance. As of today, nothing has happened at all. There's been nothing. So you agreed to go ahead and let the compliance, enforcement date run through September 27th, which is the end of the month. And then the next steps or failure, would, basically go into the administrative, citation process. So, we will work directly with legal counsel through the civil litigation. You know, the reality is we haven't had a civil litigation on a code compliance case since the last time you guys had code compliance. So we will work hand in hand with legal, and code compliance and go through this process, and build a really good strategy going forward. But unfortunately, we have received nothing. So we will continue through the process, the administrative citation, and, that would mean city fully abates and abates the property. So we'll continue to try to work with them through the process. So go.
Public comment. Anybody have anything to say on this item? Okay. Thank you for that, Rebecca. I think that was just a discussion item, right?
Yep.
Okay, item K, this is consideration of a new lease agreement with the Pickle Porch Cafe for the property located at 1192 South Main. Deb, that looks like Deb, but not really.
I'm gonna bring them all down. The Pickle Porch has been a lessee since 2020 and had a 3-year lease for the property. Grove has presented the city with a lease document that has some proposed terms for a new lease. The terms are very, very similar to those that were in her original lease. The major difference that I see is the term is 5 years with 5-year renewal, automatic renewal unless somebody notices, so it's a longer term lease. Same rent with the same CPI increases, same responsibility, more or less to maintain the bathrooms and accessible to the public. So the council with this proposal from Gretel can approve the agreement as it has been proposed, and direct staff to continue negotiations and maybe for some revised terms. Or we could reject the agreement altogether and solicit bids from other potential seats. So I don't know if you have questions, Gretel's here, if you want to speak with her, or we want to just.
Let's open it up to the public, unless anybody has anything. Let's open it up to the public at this time and see if anybody has anything to say about the Pickle Porch Cafe. You're not to say. Have it online, Rose.
Nothing online. Isabel, any comments? No?
No, I'm good.
So bringing it back to this item, I think that I'm comfortable where we have given, or I would recommend that we give direction to our city attorney to negotiate with Gretel.
Yep.
And bring that back to us at the next meeting. And and we can execute it that time. Anybody have anything to say to that?
No.
Okay, we don't need a motion on that, we're just in direction. Okay, direction set. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to administration, report. Rebecca.
Okay, so just a couple of things, I probably should have brought it up at the Utica, park section, but, it was on a different page. So, there's been quite a few comments about city watering trees, not watering trees, and the reality is we're watering the trees once a week. We take a water hauler down there, it holds about 700 gallons. We end up using about 600 gallons to water the trees. Did a little research in terms of the different types of trees and how much water they actually need, and we are sufficiently watering the trees. I think, you know, when you, and Amy, Chris, and I have kind of talked about, like, well, why do we think some of the trees that have rot in them have rot in them? And I would say, to some degree, probably because we overwatered some of the trees, because we didn't have the right type of soil for those trees. There's a whole myriad of reasons. So at this point, we are specifically focusing our watering efforts on those trees. We are allocating about 600 gallons per week, which is more than sufficient for the trees that are out there. I just wanted to give an update. We are moving forward on that sign replacement project. So we will, we're putting that message on our next bills that are going out tomorrow, sometime this week. Just to remind people, let people know that we're replacing about 50% of the signs throughout the city. These are street signs. Contemplated in that project is also the updated speed signs that were contemplated in that speed survey. So it was just a matter of meeting with the contractor and making sure we're on the same page for what those signs look like. Aaron Bruce Roy, our city engineer, worked with us on that as well. We're just making sure that we're adhering to our standards, and also identifying if maybe our city standards right to be updated because they're not in compliance with standards. So, so that's happening. So, in terms of, well, that's only 50% that are getting replaced, and we're probably going to start getting calls about, well, you know, the street there got a new sign, how the Line Street didn't get a new sign. So, we're kind of working together internally to identify if there's some additional funding that we would be able to buy additional signs. It's possible that we could add some additional signs as part of the contract, but it's also probably more cost effective for us to just inventory more signs, and then as staff have time and they need to replace them because the reflectivity is bad, then go ahead and replace those. But then we would have a standard. If you drive around the city, the signs all look different right now. And I don't think anyone, I never really necessarily pay attention to that, but people will start paying attention when you start replacing the signs. And then all of a sudden it's, well, how come, you know, how come this is different than that? So, that's just kind of the messaging. So, if people are asking you,
They didn't all need to be replaced.
they did not all need to be replaced, and we will continue to replace them as needed. And now we have a standard that will be used across the entire city, so all the signs will all look the same, and they will all have the same type of reflectivity. They will all be the same appropriate size based on what your needs are, et cetera, et cetera. But they have a problem. They will have a problem.
Oh, they do?
Yes. Many of our signs have problems.
I didn't know
do,
that they
yeah.
design for.
And so, but we wanted to make sure that it's our problem. So that will.
They got him.
Yeah. So, so that's kind of how we. Reflected problem. We just did the, rate study RFP review panel today. So, I have to make a couple calls just in terms of references. And so, it's my, hope that, at the next meeting, we will, make the recommendation to council to award, for that. Utica, Water Power Authority, they do an annual maintenance outage. It usually lasts 1 day in terms of not being able to provide water conveyance to the city. This year, it's gonna be 3 days. And we can't make it for 3 days. So, their staff and our staff have worked together in terms of what we need in order to stay compliant. So we're not issuing boil water notices to our customers. So we would have to actually do some outreach here in this next month in October, asking our customers to conserve. So I just want you to be aware that that's the messaging that's gonna have to go out. As long as nothing horrendous happens, like a big fire or anything, we should be okay. But that's just something to be aware of, that messaging is gonna be going out. Based on additional conversations, it sounds like they're thinking they might have an even longer outage next year, like a week out. And, we're gonna have to come up with a different plan, because the current plan to get us through the 3 days will not make it for 5 or 7. So, we'll have staff work together, but ultimately, I think what's gonna have to happen is some sort of, some sort of like kind of little coffer dam or something, pumping to get water pumped around the area that they need to cut off so that we continue to get water. It won't be the full flow of water that we're used to, but at least it will be enough water that we can come stay. So just wanted you to be aware of that, because that messaging might have to be going out.
October.
What day is that? The 23rd. The 23rd, Starbucks is doing a, is it public safety?
Yeah.
Yeah, public safety first responders, at Starbucks. So that will be happening there from 10 to 2. And then the only other RFP review panel that we're doing is for CDBG consultants, which we to your respondents. So we'll be doing that. I think we'll be doing that panel next week, because I will be on the rest of this week, because we have health, so that will be tomorrow or Friday. Okay. Thank you.
Council reports. Carolyn.
I attended the Central Sierra Economic Development meeting. They have a draft of their comprehensive economic development strategy and the Central Sierra Economic Development District's technical report that says. So the city is getting over our updates. I got those over to the director in person. Thank you. And so those will be implemented here. We have until the 30th before it goes to EDA and public comment. So we got that in on time.
I had COG and CTA and what did we do? Oh, can't remember all the acronyms. We approved the fiscal year 23-24, the LTF, local transportation funds for $239,000. There was state transportation assistance, STA, for $630. We did a lot of housekeeping stuff money-wise. And what else? We went over Badger's contract and did that, and that's about it. Is there anything else I'm forgetting? And I'm looking at I don't know if you can see me as well.
Right. We also received that, the yearly report from Calaveras Connect.
Right. And that was the
ridership and all that stuff.
Right. And the Fare Box Recovery Act, we still don't have to do that as of yet till 2026 or something like 2026. So everything was fine. Thanks, Isabel. And then I had, last night I had Utica. We had a $15,000 budget adjustment to Stantec. They are doing our FERC relicensing, and we asked for some extra things that weren't in the original scope of work, and they ran over. They ate some, we ate some, so it's to the tune of $15,000 for a rough number. There's a gentleman named Doug we're talking about with him, maybe look into this water rights type thing, because it's kind of Brad. Brad, for some water rights stuff to kind of get maybe some clarity on that, but that'll be brought up at a future board meeting agenda. And we have a PERS lawsuit that everybody in the state of California was served. So we just sent a rebuttal letter back to that respond. And then also Rebecca hit on the 3-day outage. Well, that would serve as much as possible. And next year, possibly, there's a CIP project for a week-long outage. And this is a normal thing that we do at the 1st of November every single year. They replace sections of flume. They muck out the holding pond. It just never affected us for 3 days because we normally have Ross Reservoir, and it just so happens that we need to fix the piece in between Ross Reservoir and Angels this time. So, yeah, Kyle and Chris, everybody are working on that. That's all I got. Oh, and I'm going to the League of Cities. Yeah, what else?
Isabel, you're up.
So I said COG, Alvin covered that, and then LAFCO and, let's see, the jobs in the spirit of influence update for UPD. There's a new LAFCO website, and then we discussed upcoming projects and the Cal conference, which is taking place in October. And that alone.
Thank you. And I have the same report that Isabel did from LAFCO last night. The only other thing is that the future project for the City of Angels will be the MSR and the Sphere of Influence. So you guys have already met, and that should be coming like after the first of the year, I think.
We met,
Yeah.
we have the draft documents. I think did he send us the Word version? I have to look.
I haven't seen.
I don't recall sending us the Word version, I have the PDF version. So his recommendation is for us to kind of just go through it. Currently, we'll work, Amy and I will work together on that. We'll also hold in departments in terms of any questions, concerns. I think part of it is identifying it's not just your city limits, it's also your service area. And we do serve outside of our city. So just making sure that that's well documented, because that will go into that overall, those two documents. So yeah, and we met, oh my gosh, what was her name? John. John's been trying to reach. What was it?
Server?
No,
His assistant, John's assistant.
So normally I only see John.
Yeah.
So he has a new person with very strong background in planning.
He must be at your meetings,
I don't know, she is,
at the LAFCO meeting
but it sounds like
at our LAFCO meetings.
with John. With what?
Is there anybody that sits up there with John?
it's not Nancy.
Nancy,
No.
No.
But it sounds like he's
It's
He
good.
keeps
Maybe
trying
try
to-
to-
yeah.
Nobody can take his spot, you guys.
so
Yeah.
no. So he's been telling me for I don't know 18 years.
He's gonna retire.
He's gonna retire, and it hasn't happened one single time. But I think he's trying. So so we did meet someone who is trying to
That's the
mentor.
first I've heard of it. Okay.
So we'll see. But that was the thing. So we're excited to get that project done. Oh, and then before I forget, we have the strategic plan implementation meeting on October 12th. Yes. So we will start pushing information out. I'm gonna work with Susie at City Gate. I think there are sections of that meeting that would be extremely beneficial to, business members in the community, as well. So we'll make sure we reach out, to your contacts associated with that.
Great,
Oh,
thank you.
Julie, piece the mouth down now.
Item 10 is correspondence. We have news and notes for August in our correspondence. Anybody have any questions or comments about that? Okay, item 11 is calendar, Rose.
So you, actually, Alvin and Rebecca will be going to League of Cities, as they stated. UWPA on the 26th, for October, COG on the 4th, Museum on the 5th. The 10th is all hazards. And then the 12th is the strategic planning meeting. I also have the 14th as the night of the museum. Okay. Is that still done? Okay. Sure. Okay. So that's what I got for the next 2 weeks.
It got moved.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's supposed to be September 16th and not.
Okay. Okay, and any future agenda items for item 12? Nope. Anybody? Okay. We'd like to thank you all for attending. At this point, we're going to adjourn back into closed session.
Thank you.